So I put off watching The Penguin for quite some time because honestly, I just wasn't expecting it to be very good. Time has conditioned me not to expect much consistency of quality when one of these expanded universe shows or comics comes out in complement to a movie I liked. On top of which, I am just so weary of the endless Disneyfication of every popular franchise. You probably remember my generation, when we were growing up, Disney would come out with the movie that all the kids would like. The Lion King, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, whatever. And they'd sell all the merch and Halloween costumes and shit, and then like a year later, they'd come out with the TV series to keep capitalizing on the world or the characters that all the kids fell in love with, but the acting and the animation wouldn't be as good. And the way they've repurposed that business model for the MCU just feels so cynical and borderline parasitic towards the concept of fandom. But what I forgot is that the expanded universe has always been intrinsic to the superhero genre, completely independent of the modern realities of the studio system. So having finally gotten around to watching The Penguin, I do maintain the quality isn't quite consistent with the Batman. By which I mean it's a good deal better, and I quite enjoyed the Batman. But honestly, it really is the truth that you can get away with so much more interesting stuff on TV these days than you'll see in most feature films. I remember thinking when watching the Batman that there was no way the Penguin is going to be a major villain in the future of this franchise. By the end, it felt like he was already relegated to the lower tier villain status that Scarecrow had in The Dark Knight. That's basically what I thought Oswald Cobb was going to be, the Scarecrow of the Matt Reeves universe. But after watching The Penguin, oh my god, not only is this guy so just getting started, I could totally see him trading punches with Batman like the Kingpin in Daredevil. The physical presence that Colin Farrell has here was so unexpected, both for the actor and the character, but it worked so well. And so did Sophia Falcone / Gigante as his antagonist. I love how she mirrors him in all these little ways, because it's a gangster show, but it's also a comic book show, so of course the antagonist is going to mirror the quote-unquote hero. We want to believe in her girl boss takeover and rebranding of the family in the same way we want to buy into Oswald's little working class criminal uprising. Doing shrooms in the underground, hanging with sex workers and fighting the power. But just like him, she's just using people to get what she wants. The principles and motives she espouses are revealed to be hypocritical and self-serving in the context of her backstory. She even lies to herself, just like Oz does. She gasses her family, he drowns his, different murder weapons, but basically the same type of death.
You're going to hell, sweetheart.
I'll save you a seat.
In that scene where she changes the family name, she makes this big deal about how everyone swept her mother under the rug after her death, gave Vitti shit for serving her father after he murdered his cousin, but that's exactly what she did. She covered for her father, even threatened the reporter looking into her mother's murder because she wanted to run the family when he stepped down, ad-lib succession joke. She didn't bring up her reservations about how her mother died until her father confronted her about meeting with the reporter and she had to explain herself. And even then, she immediately starts to rationalize it, signaling her willingness to accept whatever story Carmine tells her to stay in his good graces. She talks about the trauma she endured in Arkham, then relegates her niece to the same kind of life in an orphanage by killing her parents. She mourns her slain mother, but also kidnaps and tortures an innocent woman just to hurt her son. Righteously declaims her innocence to her family, but kills other people she believes to be innocent just to make a point.
That's what you wanted, right? To have my reputation precede me? You are so good at talking your way out of things, even at the cost of someone else's life. Especially then.
Kristen Milioti was so fucking good in this role. She also looks uncannily like a YouTuber named I Am Blakely, who I think everyone should check out because they were basically demonetized for accurate war reporting. And also a little like this professional wrestler I'm vaguely acquainted with. I don't know, Google Laura Lovelace, tell me I'm wrong. The Penguin was honestly such a refreshing watch for me, not only for being a massive step above all of the MCU shows that have been made since the Disney takeover, but also in that it was a comic book show almost completely divorced from all of the mythos and pageantry of the genre. Up until that final shot where the bat signal comes on, and aside from a few references to the Riddler, you could easily have forgotten that this was a superhero show altogether. What it kind of reminds me of are those Punisher stories Garth Ennis will write, where it's just Frank Castle in Vietnam. No costumes, no superheroes or villains, no world-ending threat where someone is trying to use the ancient crystal of bullshit to open a sky portal and bring their army of space goblins to Earth. Just grounded human stories that feel as informed by some soldier's war journal as they are by any comic book mythos. The villains are waste and greed, cowardice, and human ignorance. And that's basically the attitude the Penguin has, but instead of a war story, it's a gangster show. And it really is, like, a classic gangster story. That's what I think I love most about this version of the character. He's a wise guy.
What is he, nice?
Yeah, kinda.
No, not.
Well, he's got nice-like qualities.
One word about this. Look, I swear.
And what, Johnny? What are you gonna do? Your ghost will haunt me.
He charms the audience, manipulates our perception just like everyone else's. It's actually very reminiscent of this series that was on HBO like 20 years ago. The Soup Rhinos, I think it was called. I don't know if you've heard of it. I guess it was pretty popular. Colin Farrell is so obviously basing his performance off James Gandolfini in The Sopranos. When I mentioned it to a friend of mine, she immediately said that she could tell that without ever having watched either series. And it really is impossible to miss. The way he dresses and talks, his mannerisms and facial expressions, the way he carries his size, it's Tony Soprano all over, even baked into the writing. There's a little bit of Paulie Walnuts,
The fuck?
but it's mostly Tony. And I think a lot of this is for a very deliberate setup that subverts our expectations by playing off the audience's assumed familiarity with certain archetypes from The Sopranos. The relationship between Tony and Livia Soprano casts its shadow across an entire genre of modern television. Mad Men, Sons of Anarchy, BoJack Horseman, the flawed but charming male protagonist who was fundamentally broken by an absent father and embittered mother is a dynamic we've seen play out so many times it's practically archetypal. It's been a part of basically every show that's tried to pick up where The Sopranos left off, even those that don't engage with it directly.
But then, I called your mother. Yeah. Thanks for that, too.
From the first scene in which we meet her, everything about Frances Cobb is meant to remind us of Livia Soprano. The bitterness and ingratitude towards her doting son, the obvious mental illness, the inappropriate relationship she has with Oz, her manipulations. As soon as we see her playing off Oswald's insecurities, encouraging his most violent tendencies, it's like their whole backstory is being laid out for us. Or so we think. We immediately think, okay, it's another Livia Soprano, it's her fault Oz is the way that he is. And as if to accentuate this, Rita Hayworth is on her TV singing Put the Blame on Mame in Gilda.
Put the blame on me.
Who's me?
The blame on me.
Don't matter, kid. That's the thing. She's just a scapegoat.
We come back to this song in episode 6, right after Oz makes Frances a promise that goes unfulfilled, and right before the flashback episode that completely recontextualizes their relationship. Far from the bitter narcissist we've come to know up until this point, young Frances Cobb really seems to just be a normal, loving, if overworked, single mom. There's even a fake out where the kids are pissing her off and we think we're gonna get the "I'll stick a fork in your eye" moment, but she just turns it into something sweet.
Damn it! You're in trouble now. 'Cause we are a zombie family. Run, I'm gonna eat those sweet brains.
The zombie family line is very symbolic because the loving relationship she had with her children dies in this episode, then comes back as something monstrous and cannibalistic. The Sopranos also does recontextualize the viewer's understanding of Livia in the later seasons, and even more so in The Many Saints of Newark, where we see that Johnny Soprano really did more harm with his presence than in his absence. The effect of the Sopranos prequel sequel film is to leave the audience with a lingering glance at Tony's lost innocence, as well as that of his mother. The Penguin's flashback tells us that not only was Oswald never innocent, it's his fault that Frances went insane and raised him to be so much worse. Everything he does that night is calculated. He saw the explanation for his brothers staying out late when Rex gave them that 50, then he fixes his mother a drink when she starts asking what movie they went to and talks about going to pick them up. The camera keeps showing us his face while he watches the rain and we hear his brothers drowning for a reason. Oswald knew exactly what he was doing here. This is what broke his mother, but if something made him into a monster, we don't see it. And the impression I got is that he really was just, like the song says, born under a bad sign. So many of the scenes between Frances and Oswald take on a whole new meaning after you watch the final 2 episodes.
It's you and me under one roof now, like it used to be.
Are you trying to kill me?
I'm trying to protect you. It's better this way. When we're together.
Taking me back here. You're throwing it in my face.
The first time we watch this scene, we think she's being bitter about the poverty they came up from and shaming Oz for not being successful enough. But when rewatching it, we realize the bitterness is actually grief because Oswald murdered her other sons and she never got to confront him about it. This shot where he's holding her in bed is also very reminiscent of the ending to Eloise, the Sopranos episode where Furio leaves the country and Carmela's settling in with the crushing heartbreak and resentment she can't express towards the man holding her. The scene was recreated in Breaking Bad as well, and I love that shots from The Sopranos are now being referenced in popular media alongside stuff like I Know It Was You, Fredo. We don't know how Livia Soprano's story was originally going to end before Nancy Marchand's unexpected death between the 2nd and 3rd seasons, but there are certain indications as to where things might have been going, and I think the Penguin manages to invert this as well. In the end, for all his supposed dedication and frantic protectiveness, Oswald Cobb never really loved his mother any more than he did his brothers or anyone else. What really mattered to Oz was the validation that she gave him. That's why he was willing to let Sophia cut her finger off rather than tell a truth that would save her but threaten her ability to give him validation. Being a good son was not as important to him as preserving the delusional image of himself as the good son. Livia Soprano always said that she gave her whole life to her children, but Frances Cobb really did it. She gave her middle son everything she had, and what she couldn't give, he took. Even when she's catatonic, he's still kneeling next to her bed, yelling for her to tell him she's proud, still trying to squeeze more out of her. Then, in the end, he refused to do the one thing she wanted and put her out of her misery. He keeps her on an IV in a penthouse so he can play at keeping the promise he made her as a child long past the time when it would have had any real meaning in her life, then goes downstairs to dance with a prostitute who tells him how proud she is while wearing his mother's fuck-me dress. Frances said that her son is the devil, and now he's keeping her trapped in hell. Oz began the series reminiscing about how much Rex Calabrese was admired, and that's the only thing he really wants: admiration. He doesn't want to be a true man of the people, he doesn't want to actually help anyone, he just wants them to throw him a parade. And if they ever did, the individual people marching wouldn't mean anything to him. I really wanted to buy into his dynamic with Vic, to believe this guy was going to stick around and be like his Robin, or his Pingu, I guess. But I suppose it should have been obvious from the beginning that Vic was going to be his Christopher. The way Oz puts his arm around him at first, pulling him in close like they're friends before wrapping his other hand around Vic's neck, it's symbolic of his relationship with everyone, including the audience. He pulls us in close with every good intention so we don't feel the grip on our throat until it's too late. And that's it! That's my take. It's the exact right take. Anyone who made or makes an alternate one is a hack, and I'll see you all in like another year probably.
How you doing tonight?
I'm okay. How about you?
Oh, I'm real good.
Good.